Is a dogma lesson just not bothering to plan? That's a question for TEFLologists. When I read this book, is it better to skim or scan? That's a question for TEFLologists. Can you be a good teacher if you have a CELTA? Or should you invest in an MA or a Delta? From politics to methodology, we'll discuss them all on TEFLology.
Hello, I'm Matthew.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome back to TEFLology, a podcast about teaching English as a foreign language and related matters, presented by three self-certified TEFLologists.
TEFL Cultures.
Okay, so for this week's TEFL Culture, I'd like to talk about something that I came across at a conference I went to a couple of weeks back now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't really a conference, it was a presentation given by Professor Zoltan Dornier.
Okay.
And Professor Zoltan Dornier doesn't travel much these days.
Really?
He's very elusive.
Okay.
However, he did come to Tokyo, and we were lucky enough to go and see him.
Mm-hmm.
Before I talk about his new idea, it was kind of like a rock concert going to see him. There were people queuing up for like an hour before.
Right.
You had to get in by having a lottery, kind of a lottery ticket. Luckily I reserved, so I could just go straight in and get right to the front of the barrier and with my banner.
Were there groupies?
It kind of was, yeah.
Who was the support band?
There was no support. I don't think so. But so there was kind of weird atmosphere. But he was in town, and he was giving a free talk at a university as part of a master's program. He's also recently been to TESOL Toronto, I think last month in March.
Yeah.
By the time this goes out, it will be the month before.
Yeah, let's not get bogged down in the technicalities.
And he's come up with this new kind of concept, I guess, which I'm going to talk about in my section today.
Okay.
Before I get round to it, I just want to ask you, can you recall a time in your life, or recently, where you've had kind of an intense motivation to do something? Some sort of project or some sort of goal-driven purpose?
So in December I did the Japanese language proficiency test.
Right.
And for a few months before that, I took a practice test and realised I didn't know any of the things that I needed to know for it. So I spent like 3 months just cramming an insane amount of grammar and vocab and stuff into my head. And I passed, listeners. So yeah, it's impressive. Pretty good.
Matt, how about you?
I'm a very lazy person. It's rare that I find myself motivated to do anything at all. When I was younger, I maybe involved in more kind of projects with friends, and making short films was one thing I remember.
Okay, right.
After the fact, looking back and being surprised at how motivated I was to get it done.
Yeah. So I guess for me, my example would be I did a half marathon earlier this year, and kind of leading up to it, I was really focused on finishing the half marathon, and I had a very kind of clear goal at the end. And for that whole time, I was just jogging every night. But that's finished now, and I'm not doing any of that. Right. So I look back on that as being what I'm about to describe, basically. So Zoltan Dornier's new idea is called the directed motivational current. Okay. Or I should say direct motivational current.
Right.
It's DMC for short, as it will probably become known. Kind of like Run DMC.
Yes.
Sort of thing. Have you come across this?
No.
I don't think you would have, because it's quite new.
Yes.
So I'll just describe a direct motivational current. It's an intense motivational drive. And it might occur when a variety of time and context-related factors come together in a person or a group to generate a strong momentum to pursue a significant goal along a set pathway.
Right.
Hence, directed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So does that further describe something that you felt?
I guess, yeah. And I'm trying to think. It's, like when you do, I kind of understand what he means, I think, that you have a feeling. I think, when we talked about looking back on it, and kind of aware that was a kind of special situation, and that we don't usually have that kind of motivation to do something.
Yeah.
It's not something you're so aware of at the time, though.
No.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's something that you realise in retrospect, perhaps.
Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, what Dornier talked about was other people notice it about you.
Right.
And he used the analogy of somebody on a weight loss program and losing weight. There's a very visible outcome to that, or somebody staying late in the office to do work because they're so into their work, basically.
Right.
Maybe in Japan that's quite a lot of people in Japan actually. But so he has a very visible kind of I guess outcome to it or something.
Right.
So a DMC is a relatively short-term but highly intense burst of motivational energy, and he uses this idea as a burst of energy.
Yeah.
And he distances it from other types of motivation.
Right.
He doesn't just say you're highly motivated. It's a very particular journey that you take yourself on.
It's kind of like a ritual. You know, like the definition of a ritual, you go through a process, and at the end of the process you are transformed in some way, but it is a limited process. That's the one thing I learned from my sociology degree.
And the reason that he uses the term current is he equates it to the idea of the Gulf Stream or the East Australian current, that it's constantly flowing on its own. It doesn't have any outside kind of support. It's just a constantly moving thing.
Right.
And it takes fish or something. Do you remember Finding Nemo?
I do.
There's a picture of it here, actually, Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The listeners can't see that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the guy who's looking for Nemo. That's not Nemo himself.
But that was his motivation, right? And he was led along the Gulf Stream because he had a very kind of clear goal at the end, basically. So I think that's kind of where the analogy comes from about the Gulf Stream current. Takes you from one place to another.
Yeah.
And it's a constant flow of energy.
Right.
Basically.
Okay. Does he mean a constant flow of energy within each person or external that we kind of latch into?
I think he means it's within yourself or a group. So it could be group related.
Okay.
I'll talk about that a bit within terms of the classroom. I'll talk about that a bit later on.
Well, this idea of it being kind of self-sustaining. I mean,
So
would my example of, realising that I didn't know the stuff that I needed to pass the test and then really cramming to pass the test, would that count in that case? Because that was externally motivated in a sense.
So Professor Dornier gives 4 dimensions to the DMC. And the first one is goal, vision, orientedness.
Right.
So what was your goal?
To pass the test, to not fail the test. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and he differentiates between goal and vision. So your goal is to pass the test.
Yeah.
And your vision is an actual image that you can see in your head.
Right.
What was that image for you, I guess?
For me, well, I mean, I think what was motivating me was fear of failure. So the image would have been me slumped over a desk.
Have a circle and a cross through it.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
So a goal is abstract or a cognitive plan for the future, and a vision is a goal plus an accompanying sensory element.
Okay.
So going back to my idea of doing a half marathon, my goal was to complete the marathon. My vision was getting over the finish line,
right,
and going home. And I had a really weird motivation that I wanted to finish it and eat pineapple.
Right.
And that was my vision, I guess, eating pineapple.
Man of simple pleasures.
My house. I don't know, that was what was keeping me going, basically.
They sell pineapple to people who haven't run half marathons.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's not the most healthiest of fruit, but so anyway, there needs to be a goal or vision, basically. That's what they're saying.
Okay.
So you can, of course, you can eat pineapple without it.
Thank you.
That's right. Yeah. There also needs to be a triggering factor or a launch.
Right.
What do you think that could mean?
So perhaps in my example, it would have been doing that practice test and realising I wasn't ready for the actual test.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, but what made you want to take the test in the first place?
That's a good question. Just sort of general embarrassment at not being able to speak very well. I think. Yeah.
Do you consider that an external pressure or something just from within you?
I think that's more of an internal thing. Yeah, I'd say so. How about your drive to make films?
I mean that was a very collaborative thing. So maybe like Matt was talking about, it can be a group thing. But yeah, I don't know. For me, it was one of those things like once you start talking about it, and then it's, especially in a group, it's very easy to make plans about it. So maybe if it's not an individual, if it's a group thing, it's very easy for a small idea to kind of grow.
Right.
So Professor Dornier uses the term rocket launch as to get this whole thing started, a triggering stimuli. And he says that a range of various conditions need to be met, but first, after a successful liftoff, the spacecraft will travel a long way on a predictable course. So what he's also saying is, it takes the right conditions to get this motivation started in the first place.
Yeah.
It needs to follow a predictable course.
Right.
So I guess with passing a test, you know what you need to do to prepare for that test.
Yeah.
Running a half marathon, that speaks for itself, really,
Yeah.
I guess.
Although I'm not sure the rocket analogy is that good, because it's got the initial burst of energy and then it's just carried on by the inexorable forces of space until it falls into a gravity well and crashes into a planet.
No, but that's it. That's the whole thing. It doesn't need extra.
It doesn't. It
thrust,
only needs that
it
initial.
needs that initial push.
Right. But it does end.
Goal.
It ends this thing.
Well, where
this
it
direct.
lands. Yeah, where it lands on the moon, for example.
Or
in one
in the
particular
sun.
example, or at the International Space Station.
Right, okay.
It has a goal, and then it's taken by gravity or a flow of energy.
Okay, I see.
So that's where the idea comes from. So it needs a triggering stimuli, and it also needs a facilitative structure. So what do you think, in terms of kind of English teaching jargon, what do you think that could
A
mean?
facilitative structure. So I guess that would be like if a student's trying to learn English, it could be like a book that they follow, or learning a certain amount of words a day or something like that. Would that be an example?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah. Well, you need to have a behaviour. You need to attach a behaviour to what you're motivated by. The example Dornier gave in this talk was brushing your teeth. It needs to be such an automatised behaviour that you don't know that you're doing it.
Right.
You just need to go along with it and keep at it.
That's why some people accidentally put hemorrhoid cream on the toothbrush when they're really sleepy. They're just kind of going through the motions.
Right, yeah, I guess
Speaking
so,
from
yeah,
experience,
yeah.
though.
Perhaps.
He also talks about the need for feedback, constant feedback, and setting smaller sub-goals as well. So, for example, doing a half marathon, maybe my sub-goal would have been, I'm going to do 5K tonight, I'm going to get this time, basically. Making a film, I guess. Recording a scene or something, learning a new word for a test. So there needs to be some sub-goals there, and you need to actually make it a part of your behaviour.
Right.
Rather than forcing yourself to do it, it needs to become part of your daily routine.
Right. Presumably you need to force yourself to make it a part of your daily routine.
That would be part of the initial thrust,
The
I
initial
guess.
thrust.
Yeah, that's right. And so he talks about the need for a positive emotionality.
Okay. It's a bit like an effective filter kind of thing.
Yeah, so you need to I think what he's saying is you need to enjoy unenjoyable things, essentially. Like
I do.
teeth.
I've seen a lot of trauma films.
Yeah, so that's yeah. Okay.
But making yourself enjoy unenjoyable, is there a technique to that?
I mean, if you're motivated by your goal or vision,
If motivation is strong, there's presumably some kind of formula. If motivation is stronger than your dislike of the activity.
Right, sure. I think that's what he's saying. If you're driven by your goal or vision, the smaller things along the way you're gonna enjoy doing them. I guess, arguably. Yeah.
Well, it's like I can't remember who said it, but a writer said, "I hate writing, but I love having written."
Right.
Yeah. So as I say, this concept, I guess, is a very new concept, and it was only kind of introduced to the world at TESOL Toronto, and in Japan earlier this month.
Yeah.
What are your general thoughts about this idea? I haven't talked about the classroom yet at all. Let me talk about the classroom first. So he says that within the English language classroom, he says the best way to kind of use this DMC idea is through a project-based work.
Right.
Basically getting the students conducting kind of project like studies, essentially, completing a project together.
How does that fit in with this idea of trying to overcome, the not wanting to do itness of the thing? Like, because it sounds to me like this concept is very much related to intrinsic motivation.
Right.
So how can a teacher sort of impose that on someone? How can you give someone an intrinsic motivation?
I don't think they can, to be honest.
Right.
I don't think it is a teacher-led thing. I think it's just describing a condition that not even just in the language classroom, but people go through from time to time.
Right.
And I think he's trying to make it a thing for the language classroom.
Yeah.
And it's quite loosely at the moment, I think.
I mean, it seems like it's a new term and it's a new way to frame it, but the kind of individual parts of it seem to be the same kind of things that people have been talking about motivation
like
for a long time.
In vocabulary myths, Keith Falsey says that the best vocabulary learners, like there's all these ways that people learn vocabulary, but all we know really about the best vocabulary learners is that they have something that they do and they do it consistently. And it sounds like the same kind of thing, making it part of your routine.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things exist already, as you say.
And the conclusion for the classroom application seems to be, I don't know, task-based learning? Is that what he's saying?
Project-based, task-based learning.
Right.
There is a book coming out soon, actually, I should say, later this year in September, called Motivational Currents in Language Learning, Frameworks for Focused Interventions. And I think this will be a textbook about how teachers can kind of get this DMC within the students or the groups, basically. And I think it will be a very principled approach, because that's what he says. This DMC needs to be maintained, naturally maintained in itself. But I think teachers probably could bring about that in the classroom too.
Right. I mean, my only other comment would be that, like, our examples of DMC, they're relatively unique or rare. It's not the kind of thing that happens that often.
Yeah.
No.
So in terms of fostering that as an ongoing thing in a group of students, it seems like it would be tricky, but maybe there are techniques for doing that.
If you did have something like with me a test, and you kept setting tests, then that would be perhaps one way to do it, because there's that motivating factor at the end of it, and there is a kind of a fear of failure which you'd want to avoid. But at the same time, a teacher doesn't have the authority for their tests to mean that much, really, in the class.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. But that's today's TEFL culture, DMC.
TEFL Pioneers.
Today's TEFL pioneer is Ælfric of Eynsham. Should have asked that as well.
Eynsham?
Eynsham.
I think it's Eynsham.
Eynsham.
E-Y-N-S. Or Eynsham.
Yeah. Well,
Eynsham.
I don't know.
E-Y-N-S-H-A-M.
Yeah.
We'll just spell it out each time.
Yeah, so this is our most ancient TEFL pioneer. He lived from the year...
Challenge accepted.
the year 955 to 1010.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. And he was an English abbot and a prolific writer of Old English, so not even Middle English, Old English. Who's known for his homilies and biblical commentaries and other writings, and is considered one of the most influential figures in Anglo-Saxon literature. Yeah. He was educated at Winchester and was a strong supporter of English Benedictine reform. That's interesting, isn't it? And he also engaged in teaching religious matters to students.
So educated at Winchester School of Learning stuff?
Yeah, that one. Yeah. And what he's perhaps most relevant for in terms of this podcast is his teaching of Latin to students. So he wasn't teaching English, he was speaking Old English, but he taught Latin. That was considered a very important language at the time. Yeah. He wrote 3 works designed to help student monks. Is that the right word for a student monk? Student monk?
Student monk?
Apprentice monk?
Yeah.
Apprentice.
Padawan?
Yeah. Monklet?
Monklet.
And so he wrote 3 books to help students learn Latin: the grammar, the glossary, and the colloquy. Colloquy. In the grammar, he translated Latin grammar into English, which is considered actually the first vernacular Latin grammar in medieval Europe.
Wow.
Yeah. His glossary it's basically a vocab list, but it's quite unusual because the words are not in alphabetical order, they're grouped by topic. So you'd have like weather and then all the words for that, and food and all the words for that.
Within each topic, do you know how they were?
No, I don't know. But in terms of language teaching, the thing that's most interesting is the colloquy.
Okay.
Yeah. I should point out, I heard about Ælfric on the History of English podcast originally, and so a bit of a tip for hat to that podcast. It's really good, go and listen to it, but listen to this one first.
Don't turn off now.
Or stop, pause, listen to it and then come back.
Yeah. So the colloquy is written in Anglo-Saxon and Latin, and it's designed as a series of question and answer dialogues between a student and a teacher.
Okay.
So when we think
when you say Anglo-Saxon,
Old English. Yeah.
Okay.
When we think of Latin teaching, that's got a very strong association with grammar translation, because that was kind of how it was taught in schools in medieval Europe and that kind of thing.
Also, when I was in secondary school.
Yeah. Well, you're posh, little Lord Fauntleroy Secondary School. You learned Latin.
Yeah, I was the last year to learn Latin before they. I think everybody learned Latin then.
Latin was long gone before your final year, wasn't it?
No, well, when I was
as a living language.
Oh right, okay.
When in my second and third year of secondary school, I did Latin. Yeah, and then they stopped making it a compulsory
Then
subject.
they realised no one's
Okay.
actually
Right.
speaking anymore. Right, okay.
Yeah, but this was interesting because it's written as a dialogue and it was meant to be repeated and practiced between the teacher and the students, and then they focused on the vocab lists and the grammar.
So there was a number
later
of
on.
dialogues that they used.
Yeah, well, it's one dialogue, but it's split into kind of sections.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So the first part is a question and answer dialogue between the teacher and the little student monks. And then the middle is written in the form of a discussion between a group of workers. And the last part is a teacher-pupil philosophical discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's interesting about it, I think, so I read it through it a couple of days ago, is that it gives us an interesting glimpse into life in England at the time. So he based his dialogues on his own experiences as a student, as a little monklet himself. And what the students say kind of reflects what life was like for people. At the time, workers weren't free; they were bound to the lord of the manor and did work in exchange for, like, a place to live and a bit of land to till
Very
and that
similar,
kind of thing.
very similar these days,
Yes, yeah.
in a way.
And at that time, life was very harsh. Farm labourers had to get up, at dawn and look after animals, till the land, that kind of thing. And it's interesting just to look at the Colloquy and see that reflected in his writings.
Yeah.
So I found a translation of the Colloquy, translated from, it's on kentarchaeology.com if you want to read along, listeners, translated by Anne E. Watkins. And let's read a little bit of it.
Okay. Where should we start from?
So I'll be the teacher, and you can be, well, first it's teacher and pupils, but I don't think you should do it in chorus. So I'll be the teacher, and Matthew, you can be the pupils.
Okay.
Okay, so take it away.
Okay. Master, we young men would like you to teach us how to speak properly and with a wide vocabulary, for we are ignorant and badly spoken.
How would you like to speak?
We are concerned about the way we speak, as we want to speak correctly and with meaning, and not with meaningless base words. Would you beat us and make us learn? Would you? For it is better for us to be beaten to learn than to remain ignorant. However, we know that you are a kind-hearted man who would not wish to inflict blows on us, unless we ask for them.
I ask you to tell me what work you do. I am a monk by profession. I sing 7 psalms during the day and spend my time in reading and singing. But, however, that's the same word, I should like you, in the meanwhile, to learn to converse in the Latin language. What skills do your workmates possess?
Some are ploughmen, some are shepherds, other are ox herds, hunters, fishermen, fowlers, merchants, leatherworkers, salters, and bakers. Can you tell us?
Oh, that's me.
Whoops.
Can you tell us, ploughman, how you do your work? And now we'll turn to the ploughman.
Am I the ploughman?
Yes.
Master, I have to work so very hard. I go out at the crack of dawn to drive the oxen to the field and yoke them to the plough.
You're not an ox herd, you're a ploughman.
For not even in the bitter winter would I dare stay at home for fear of my lord. But when I have yoked up the oxen and fastened the plough and the ploughshare, what does that mean, to the plough, then I must plough a whole field or more for the whole day plough. I just added that.
Okay. Have you any mates?
Yes, I have one boy who drives the oxen with a goad. Goat, isn't it? He is a horse.
No, he's...
Your boy mate is a horse?
Thought that was it. He is hoarse from shouting and the cold.
Do you do anything more during the day?
Yes, indeed, I do very much more. I have to fill the stable with hay for the oxen, water them and take their dung outside. Alas, I have to endure such hard work since I am not a free man.
Okay, so that's the end of the first little dialogue with the ploughman, and it goes through each of the jobs mentioned before, with them describing their day. And there's a lot of repetition, so the teacher often asks, do you have any friends? What are your skills? Who do you work for? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Nice.
What do you think about that as a method of teaching?
So, what would they do after this? Would the teacher say, what was I asking? What jobs were mentioned? That kind of...
I think that this would be mainly repetition, and then they'd go to their grammar and their vocab list and look at the words and look at the grammar essentially, and practice that at home in their little monk bedrooms.
Okay. So this was originally in Latin.
Latin. It was kind of like like a bilingual book today.
Yeah.
It was in Old English and Latin
I see.
on the 2 pages.
Okay.
I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe the students memorize it in Latin. Is that the idea?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you think you would, if like when back in your school days learning Latin, do you think this would have been better than the grammar translation method?
I mean, we had dialogues like this, and we had a story,
Right.
Marcus and Aurelius, and a whole cast of characters,
Right.
And we'd read about them, and then we'd go through sentence by sentence, translating it.
Mm.
Actually, I don't remember if it was. I think it was written more as a story, rather than a dialogue or not a dialogue, but people speaking. I think people speaking is a maybe nicer way to do it, especially like you say, you can have the repetition, same questions repeated over and over again.
Would the pupils really say this though? I mean, you can tell the teachers, or what's his name?
Ælfric.
You can tell he's written this about talking about beating and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like, it's kind of like he's trying to discipline the monkeys or whatever they're called at the same time.
Davy Jones.
When they're monkeying around, you mean?
Right. It seems like there's another agenda at play as well. He's trying to influence their way of thinking as well, perhaps.
Or maybe back 1,000 years ago, that was just an accepted part of the education system.
Yeah.
Because he talks about the discipline and
Yeah. And also he puts in this little self-serving bit. We know that you're a kind-hearted man. Yeah, Ælfric. Yeah, whatever.
I love myself.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of dialogues here. It sort of just goes on and on with him talking to the salter, the tanner, the cook, the lawyer, and all that kind of thing. You think the lawyer would have had a slightly better standard of life than the ox herd, but apparently not.
Maybe not.
So this was perhaps one of the earliest teaching methodologies that I could come across for languages. Apart from Yakudoku, I think it's the second oldest after Yakudoku, which was 3,000 years old.
Right.
This one's only 1,000 and a bit years old. But yeah, that was the work of Ælfric of somewhere. And that was today's TEFL Pioneer.
TEFL News.
This episode's TEFL News is, it's referring to something that happened on the 21st of February.
Okay.
So a little bit old, but it also has relevance, I think. So 21st of February, as I'm sure you both know well, is International Mother Language Day.
Yes.
As fully recognized by the United Nations.
Okay.
So it's 21st of February, but this year is the 15th anniversary of the first International Mother Language Day.
Interesting.
It was chosen, the 21st of February was chosen because it's the day in 1952 when students from the University of Dhaka and Dhaka Medical College were demonstrating for the recognition of Banglas, which is one of the two national languages of East Pakistan, and they were shot dead by police.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But in recognition of students demonstrating to protect their mother language, that's why this day was chosen.
Okay,
Right.
It wasn't officially made a thing by United Nations and UNESCO until the year 2000. The year 2000, 21st of February, was the first International Mother Language Day.
Right.
So as you can imagine, International Mother Language Day is a day to kind of celebrate mother languages, but especially maybe languages that are under threat.
Right.
So what you're kind of... it's tricky. There's also a... and I don't remember the exact term, but there is a human... not human rights, but rights of languages, a linguistic right.
Endangered languages or something. The National Geographic has a whole thing about it.
Yeah, but importantly, they don't refer to them as minority languages or endangered languages.
Right.
The idea being they don't want to describe languages in those ways. Because they want to put all languages on an equal footing, and all languages deserve the same rights.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So things that happen on International Mother Language Day, and just by the way, I think it became International Mother Language Day just because whoever came up with it maybe wasn't a linguist necessarily. Right. It probably should be Mother Tongue Day, something like that, or Native Language Day. Right. As far as apparently, in linguistics, a mother language refers to a proto-language.
Right. Like Proto-Indo-European or something.
Yeah, it would be a mother language. But that's not what this is about for all you real linguists out there.
But definitely listen to this podcast.
Yeah. They're listening to the History of English podcast.
Right.
Another plug then.
It's really good. I like it a lot.
All right. So on each year on International Mother Language Day, there's a slightly different focus. So the first few were just celebrating the day. But for example, from 2004, the focus is on children learning, and especially maybe literacy. 2005 was Braille and sign languages.
Oh, okay, nice.
2006 was languages in cyberspace.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. In 2013, it was Punjabi, so they decided to highlight a particular language. In 2014, it was Turkish, the Turkish language, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
How about this year? What's this year's?
Just inclusion in and through education.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So maybe a focus on education.
Right.
One thing that UNESCO advocates is mother tongue instruction, and they try to promote is what they call a multilingual education approach.
Right.
Bilingual or multilingual. I think they go for multilingual. And that's defined as the use of 2 or more languages as mediums of instruction.
Right. In every country, in every setting. Setting is correct.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe not in every setting, although possibly. The term multilingual education refers to the use of at least 3 languages.
Right.
So the mother tongue, a regional or national language, and an international language. I wonder what that could be. But
Spanish, probably.
Probably Spanish or Chinese.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think you often see these kinds of things in the news. How many languages die out each year, and efforts to preserve dying languages. So maybe one question for us is, how do you feel about this idea of preserving languages which maybe are dying out?
I think it's good. I mean, it's like I was reading an article about heritage language education in Okinawa, where there's not really anyone who speaks Uchinoha. Is that the name of the language? I think.
Ryukyu, wasn't it Ryukyu?
Well, Ryukyu was the name
of
of the states and the islands. Yeah, it's like the Ryukyu Kingdom. But they had, I think it's Uchinoha, perhaps, and they have these heritage language education programs, and the people who go and try to learn the language, they're mainly doing it as a way to sort of connect. It seems they're mainly doing it as a way to kind of connect with their national identity, which was sort of taken away from them. And I think that's important. I think being able to express yourself in a language which is connected to your heritage. I think it probably is important for lots of people, and it's difficult for us to see that point of view because we're all speakers of the language that went around displacing all these other languages.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess the languages speak for themselves. I guess the users of the language.
That should be the slogan of this. The languages speak for themselves.
They speak. I mean, I guess if they have users, they're going to keep speaking the language. I think it's more to raise awareness about. And I think this year's topic was about education.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
They need to be better awareness.
But I mean, do you think that the languages aren't so important if there aren't a large number of speakers of them?
I don't think so. I think if there's people using them, the thing is though, like if a language isn't spoken by, if there isn't people born into that language, then it's never gonna. I mean, that's just one reason, but I mean,
what about Welsh? Because Welsh went through a long period of declining numbers of speakers, and then through heritage language education programs, it started increasing, and now there's a large population of Welsh speakers.
So how important is it that the people in Wales speak Welsh?
For me, it's not important at all, but for them, I think it probably is very important.
It's about identity, and especially with the elections coming around soon, there's quite a especially after the Scottish independence question, I think languages have kind of come into it as well.
Yeah,
there's a lot of they just had the party debates on TV, and the Welsh leader was
speaking in Welsh.
Not speaking in Welsh, but she kind of finished a lot of her little bits of a kind of vote for Wales, vote for our party, and she said it in Welsh.
Yeah.
Nice. So I think that's a little bit of kind of...
Yeah. Where are you on this? Because you seem a bit sceptical, a bit more...
No, not at all. I mean, I think it depends why a language is dying out. I think if a language is kind of naturally dying out, maybe artificially keeping it going... I mean, obviously I think it's important to record those languages.
Right.
But I think, in some cases languages are... They're not dying out; they're being killed.
Yeah, it's called linguicide.
Yeah, right. Okay, nice.
So this National Day, does it have a kind of a conference with it, or an events, or any kind of?
Yeah, they do a series of events. They give a prize. to people promoting languages which are endangered.
Right.
So there's different things that they do.
Huh.
So I mean, obviously, if in certain countries, or that maybe the rules of that country may decide they want to just snuff out a language. For purposes of identity, maybe taking away the identity of a group of people.
So,
in which case, of course, I think it's important. But history, I'm sure, is full of dead languages. And they die just because of the evolution of the society.
Right, sure. But it's very difficult, I think, especially in an age of globalization. It's very difficult to really tell sometimes if it's dying off naturally or if it's dying off because of outside forces.
One issue that this is connected to, I think, is in America, where especially in California, the topic of bilingual education is quite important, or it's a big topic at the moment. And then it comes down to people. Maybe we've talked about this before, but people. I think that the kind of spurious reason they give is they think it's not possible. Bilingual education is not possible.
Right.
But that's just an excuse for saying, well, everybody should only be taught in English.
I remember reading something about this. There was a school in America somewhere where each different student was going to read out the Constitution in their own language. And one girl read it out in Arabic, and there were parents that were in uproar about it, complaining this is an offence. I was like, well, it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I think it was actually on the same day, this day actually.
Okay.
And they were celebrating all the other languages, and that went wrong. But it shouldn't have done. I'm not saying it shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I mean that's just naked xenophobia.
Bunch of idiots.
But I mean, so I think it's interesting that UNESCO is so clearly behind multilingual education. And I think they also look at research and even fund their own research into the importance of mother tongue instruction, especially in the early years of schooling. So we missed it this year, but next year let's all get together and celebrate International Mother Language Day.
Yeah, by speaking in our mother tongue. Unlike what we normally do.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for listening to today's podcast.
If you'd like to contact us, please send an email to teflology@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter @teflology. Our last podcast episode, the interview with Professor Adrian Holliday, was very well received, so thank you all for downloading that. And if you'd like to rate or review the programme, that would help us out a lot, so please do. So it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye.